resolution which goes into effect as Executive Order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. For this meeting, the Board of Selectmen is convening by Zoom as posted on the town's website. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. As a preliminary matter, I'm going to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. I am Bob Springer, Chair of the committee. John
Jeffries, Clerk.
Robin Hunter is engaged in some business transactions and expects to join us later. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Chris Dwelly.
Present.
Kate O'Brien.
Present.
Mona DeSulio. Mona, you're on mute.
I'm here.
Okay.
There you are.
And I don't believe we have any anticipated speakers tonight. So, citizens' comments. Justine?
If I may, first of all, I want to thank you, select people. I'm sure many people know that you are all volunteers. I am overwhelmed with the impression of the number of issues that you all have had to deal with in the last several months. COVID, water, Caryl school, schools, I mean, whatever. Okay. As many of you know, I'm an environmentalist who's been involved in a lot of land trust and water issues. I'm speaking only for myself. I would just like to say, talk about three very specific areas where people can help vis-a-vis the water issues in Dover. I don't think these are going away. The way that COVID happened and people adjusted, I think climate change is real. Everything that so far we have discovered on the various committees I've been associated with show a increase in what we would normally conceive of as bizarre weather, where you have droughts followed by torrential rains, etc. That's my assumption. Of course, I could be wrong. Having said all that, I look around town when I'm driving, and I know John Jeffries made a mention of this. There are still many people in Dover who are using irrigation systems for their lawns. They shouldn't be. Basically, we homeowners need to start adjusting, in my opinion, our attitudes about what constitutes a sustainable lifestyle here in a town that's totally dependent on private wells for in the colonial water system, which is again wells within the town of Dover. My plea to homeowners who have irrigation systems is to turn them off. I don't have an irrigation system. I've also lived here over 40 years, and guess what? Over the 4 or 5 droughts I've seen, my lawn goes dormant during droughts. It's yellow like the town green, and I applaud you guys for not irrigating the town green. And guess what? When the rainfalls eventually come, as they will, the grass will bounce back. If indeed people insist, and they shouldn't, but if they insist on irrigating their lawns, do it before 9 o'clock in the morning or after 5 p.m. If you're doing it midday, as many people do, most of that water is evaporating. It's not even getting to the root systems, okay? Now, lastly, and I'll try to be as quick as possible, Mass DEP. I know most people know by now that colonial water is not regulated by the Board of Selectmen. It's regulated the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. Most of us know by now that the colonial water has exceeded its permitted withdrawal amounts for over 2 decades. My plea to the selectmen, please is continue to talk to Colonial about living within their permitted water withdrawals. It may even mean if people don't live within the permitted water withdrawals, Colonial may have to shut off water for a period of time during droughts. During droughts, we're only talking about. In Dover, the only problem I see so far vis-a-vis adequacy of water is from irrigation systems being used to keep lawns that should be going dormant during the summer green. They shouldn't. They shouldn't be kept green all summer long, especially when you're in an extreme drought. And so please, Selectmen, continue to put pressure on the Mass DEP to regulate Colonial's water withdrawals and their conservation measures that they're supposed to do. And lastly, as far as those of us like me who are on my own private water supplies, which I know are 2/3 of the town, eventually my hope is that the Selectmen, working with the Board of Health and whatever water task force you guys come up with in the future, you will sponsor and approve of an irrigation bylaw at our next town meeting in the spring. Okay? Because whether you're, as you know, Bob, and I know John knows, and if Robin were here, she knows, we're all drawing from the same aquifer. It doesn't matter if it's Colonial water or it's our own private wells. And what's at risk here is our water supplies. And you have only to look at my neighbor who went out of water on August 11th to know he had no drinking water until the well was able to recharge. I've been in that, by the way, same state over 8 years ago, where I had to go from a 35-foot deep well to over a 500-foot deep well. This is one of these things we're not going to be able to drill ourselves out of. I think you guys know that, right? So that's it. Citizens' comment from a person who cares about the environment, who cares about water adequacy, and who also cares about Dover real estate prices. And unless we start addressing our water issues, we are not in a good position.
So, Justine, could you just identify yourself and your address? Record?
Sorry. Justine, you're a damn 23 Haven Street, member of various committees, but speaking tonight as an individual.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justine.
Yes.
Thank you.
Guys.
Okay.
Well, thank you for
Move
what
on. There's no comments or questions.
I understand.
So, Mrs. Hunter is going to be late for the day. There's no questions on that. There's no follow-up. We're going to start the meeting. We're on. Mrs. Hunter is engaged in some business transactions. She may join us later. So, as a consequence, I'm going to start with the meeting with item 1.2 and defer 1.1 to later in the meeting. Should Mrs. Hunter, be able to make it, and if not, I will defer that item until the September 3rd meeting. So item 1.2 is a presentation of goals and objectives for fiscal year 21, and I'm assuming that's going to be Mr. Zoe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the board will recall, they went through quite an extensive goal-setting process for the fiscal year over the summer, taking input from various boards and committees, residents, and staff to help carve out really the focus areas for the community for not only this fiscal year that we're presently in, but for the next few years. And that culminated with the set of goals that are in your packet, in which were recently issued back out to all the boards and committees for their input to help either verify or provide any additional context or thoughts that they might have that the board should focus on for this year. So this agenda item this evening is really just the commentary that has come back from the boards and committees in town, which isn't much. Which I think is a good thing, which indicates that the board had done a really good job from the outset in bringing everyone into the goal-setting process for the fiscal year. So much of the comment that we received, again, these comments are within your packets this evening, really just reaffirm the goals that the board has set out and focused on for fiscal year 21. So I'm happy to read through the goals if the board likes. Otherwise, the intent of this agenda item is for the board selectmen to finalize these as the goals and focus areas for fiscal year 21. What I will then do is I will then go back and work with staff to develop out work plans on how we will accomplish these goals for the current fiscal year, and we'll get started. So that is this item this evening, Mr. Chairman.
John?
Mr. Chair, Chris, thank you. I don't think it's necessary for Chris to read through. It's a pretty short template, and it's been very widely distributed for the committees and subcommittees. As Chris said, there's been buy-in where the goal is for, at this stage, to be as collaborative and inclusive as it can be for our goals and objectives as the executive branch. So what I'd entertain, Mr. Chair, is if there were any comments or any questions on the objectives we could go through. But I think at this stage, as Chris is again formulating and collating the feedback from the various groups, it's probably not necessary to take time at this evening's meeting to go through it and just reiterate what's already been printed.
Yeah, no, I agree, John. I think that we've tried to get these out and distributed, and I think that's done. I was interested in some of the comments coming back. I thought there's some interesting comments. Appreciate people taking the time to do that. So do we need a formal motion to accept those, Chris, or do we just say, Chris, those are the objectives for fiscal year 21, get to it?
The board voted initially when we first set these, but it'd be good to get another vote to finalize if these are the goals for FY20.
Okay, make a motion to approve the fiscal year 21 goals and objectives of the Board of Selectmen as indicated on the documentation.
Seconded, John Jeffries.
All in favor, aye, Bob Sprant.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Good to go. I'm going to do something here. Dave, you were waving your hand, and I assumed you were doing some sort of follow-up. Did you intend to make a citizen's comment? I'm not getting anything, Dave. You don't seem to be muted, but I can't hear you. Okay, so you ran away.
Yeah.
Okay. Item 1.3, Human Resources Policies Procedures Update. Kate?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to give a little summary, the town selected HR Key Solutions consultant Mary Beth Bernard to conduct an HR audit. And so the goals of the HR audit was to complete an entire audit of all our HR practices. That includes forms, personnel filing system, review processes and procedures, identify any potential issues or problems, limit Dover's liability and ensure best practice or an issue, make recommendations regarding HR policy and practices, and provide recommendations and templates for Dover's ongoing use. So the study incorporated an analysis of our personnel files, all our processes, forms. We're lucky to have the consultant get on site right pre-COVID, so she was able to come into the building and talk to employees. And so I'll just go over some of the processes that is in the report that were examined. The first would be recruitment, application for employment, payroll forms, onboarding, benefit forms, processing, personnel files, policies, job descriptions, and classification and compensation. So good news is that the town is in compliance with like the majority of the processes that were analyzed and reviewed, and the ones that that were not in compliance of and that were made recommendations, we're already continuing to work on them right now as we speak. So recommendations included centralizing the recruitment and hiring through the assistant town administrator in place of the current process. So this, putting a trained HR professional at the helm helps deal with complex laws, policies, and govern equal opportunity, discrimination, and employment law. It's recommended that all the departments notify the town administrator of a vacancy and ask permission to fill a position. Just kind of funnels all the HR process through the town administrator's office, which is one of our goals. So this will help the town's liability and provide a professional and legally compliant recruitment process as well. As of right now, there are some commissions and boards who are hiring on their own. So that's something we want to stop. And again, this is just a recommendation, but it's something we're starting to put in place. Another recommendation was creating writable PDF documents and having all the required paperwork online. We have, Dave Sullivan, as you know, is undergoing that project as far as having all our documents online and making them writable. So working on that now, and I am currently working on the HR page on our website. So it was also recommended that the town embark on a process with the personnel board to review and update the rules and regulations to include some newly adopted laws and to update workplace policies to reflect compliance in the year 2020. So we are in the middle of doing that right now. The consultant is that is something she's working on with us as well. And I also presented this HR audit in front of the personnel board a few weeks ago. So they're aware of everything that's going on, and we're working together the path going forward. She also recommended a couple of other things. Have the town have their own quarry policy, customer service policy, and a workplace violence policy. Her last recommendation was Dover's wage and compensation plan be updated. We currently have an RFP out for a personnel classification and compensation study, and that RFP closes in early September. So that is just getting started as well. So overall, it was a really good HR audit. I think we're in good shape, and their recommendations really mirror some of me and Chris's goals we have, and the board's goals as far as centralization of the HR office.
So my impression of the report was that a lot of it was refreshing and updating, and that a couple of areas that they pointed out would be very helpful. I went to the audit checklist, which is page 8 of the report. I think it's something like page 19 or something in the draft, and just going down there. Again, sort of refreshed more than anything else. So that was actually pretty encouraging.
Absolutely.
I agree. And Kate, well done. In one of the boards that I sit on, I chair the audit, and it is amazing to me how many moving parts there are. And from the HR standpoint, the complexity today it changes at the speed of light. It is really amazing. And when back in the old days, when you just talked about the compensation audit, right, as a subset of one of the recommendations. Back in the old days, it was simply, are we competitive? That's what we would. Are we competitive? Are we within a specific target range? And now it's a very different world. So you really have to have financial metrics, and that's something this particular board, it's in our goals and objectives, and Bob talks about it, I've talked about it, Robin talks about it, being able to quantify financially, numerically quantify where we are relative to everybody else. So I think it's great. I think it's a really good start. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Hunter.
I made it.
I know.
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought, I like it when you don't have surprises, so there were no surprises in the audit. And I think, as Kate mentioned, what's really refreshing is we were on the right track already. So, I think the changes that we had already identified are really those that are highlighted in this report. I mean, we've all known that we needed to update the compensation study. The one little nuance that I saw, which was something I didn't quite appreciate, is that, I always thought our compensation was based upon a 35-hour work week, but it appears that it's based upon a 40-hour work week. And, our normal work week is 35 hours, so probably something to address in the compensation study.
Thank you. Well done. So I'm going to go to item 1.4 because hopefully that'll be a quick item. And then I'm going to circle back to 1.1. So air quality consultant discussion and potential vote. Chris?
Thank you. So as the board knows, the town's functional COVID-19 task force has regularly met since March and continues to meet in order to monitor the pandemic and make recommendations to the community, town leadership, and to staff. And an emerging area of concern the group has recently identified is around air quality in our buildings. And the task force has recommended that we take a closer look into this matter. And while there are no explicit guidelines from the CDC or the state or our local leaders at this time, some general recommendations from the CDC and from the state include ensuring that our ventilation systems and facilities are operating properly and increasing the circulation of outdoor air as much as possible. And so those are, pretty general recommendations. So the thought is, and the interest is for the town to engage an engineering firm to help us assess our existing HVAC systems in our buildings and the air quality within those buildings, and provide us really with optimization recommendations, right? So to assess the health of our existing systems and the air quality, and then to provide us with things that we could do to improve them. So as such, we've solicited proposals from 7 engineering firms, and we have received responses from 4. Those responses are included in this evening's packets. Based on conversations with the task force, the Board of Health, and the school administration, we'd like to move forward with this effort. We would begin with the Caryl Community Center and Chickering School based on the intended reopening plans for both buildings, and then would move on to some of the other older buildings that we have in town. The estimated cost for this work is under $10,000 and is eligible for reimbursement from the CARES Act. So this evening, I'm asking for the board's authorization to allow me to move forward with engaging a firm to conduct air quality assessments in various town buildings. Another point that I want to mention is we have been working very closely with the school district and the school administration. While we're working with them on potentially an assessment in Chickering, the region will have to essentially lead the charge on the regional school buildings, given that they're regional. So I just wanted to throw that caveat out there. So that is this topic, and I guess I'd throw it back to you, Mr. Chairman, to see if there's anything you wanted to add from your perspective on the task force, or I know we've got Kay with us here this evening as well.
So This is the air flow ventilation system, ventilation issue has sort of been lurking in the background since very early days when there was a headline about COVID spreading in a Chinese restaurant, and they tied it back to the air conditioning flow that was behind the person pushing the air to the next table over. So this really has been sort of an unresolved or an undefined or under-researched area. More and more recently, as we went through time from March through coming up to the current time, there's been a lot of work done by researchers who have concluded that COVID primarily spreads through the air. And there are two ways it does it. There's these droplets that are heavy, and then there's smaller droplets. And the smaller droplets linger in the air for up to 3 hours. I think that's correct. And so as we went through, we consistently asked the question about air quality in the buildings, and then we did an internal review, and Caryl simply has no air transfers. I mean, they don't refresh. It doesn't bring in air from the outside. And I think you're talking about recommendations in turnover air 3 to 5 times an hour. So that sort of stuck out like a sore thumb. And obviously, with people coming in preschool, increasing capacity in the building, stale air, and I guess the part of the issue is I don't believe in taking. I'm going to let Kay sort of correct me. I don't believe simply moving the air around through air conditioning systems or fans is a solution. You really need to refresh or replace the air on some sort of regular basis. And all this, and these discussions were going on between the Board of Health in Dover, the Board of Health in Sherburne. I mean, this has been going on for a while. But it all crystallized with the request to basically reopen the CBD.
Hi, I'm listening to a selectmen's meeting.
So, hence, then that's right. Then we sort of organized ourselves to quickly try to find people to do work. And we're here tonight to hopefully vote to hire a firm. We'll give Chris the right to go and hire a firm and get on with the work. Kay, do you have anything to add? You're muted, Kay.
Oh, sorry.
Now you're good. Now you're muted again. Now you're good.
All right. Does that look good? Can you hear me now?
That's good, yep.
Okay, good. First thing I would say was it was great to see that Chris was able to pull together some proposals already. It seemed very expeditious, and because it's important to move along with this. We do have the benefit, at least in many of the buildings, of the warm fall air and being able to open windows. It's a problem in some places, but it allows us a little time to get the consultation done. It's great that this is a reimbursable item too under the CARES Act. I was at a meeting with at the schools with Andrew and Dawn this afternoon, and the subject came up, and we were talking. Dawn was talking about whether it would be reimbursable for the region as well, whether it could be the cost could be apportioned between the two towns. Do you know, Chris, if that's possible?
So the state's been a little funny with the CARES Act. At first, they said that regional school districts could go through their member municipalities for reimbursement, and they said that they couldn't. So they opened up a separate, essentially, line of grant money for regional school districts. So it's still a little bit unclear, and essentially what we and other communities and regional school districts have been doing is seeking state guidance for everything that a regional school district wants to purchase before they purchase, so that we know whether or not it's reimbursable.
Oh, okay. And I suppose you and Dawn will probably be talking about that. Good. I guess the Board of Health's biggest concern is about the Caryl school. That our biggest concern in Dover, the Caryl building, because of the obvious problems, and the CDC really, the CD's request to reopen really crystallized that for us. We learned, for instance, that the CDC bathrooms have no outside, they have no exhaust fans. There are other bathrooms in the building that do have exhaust fans, but that's only one of many issues for them. The CDC staff is thinking about this too, but they clearly need some more support from us about what's going to be done to mitigate the problems they have. And I guess the question too is, can they be mitigated enough to make the place functional? I would hope so. To my untrained eye, one possible solution is to use the windows that they have to create more air exchange, either just by opening them or by putting in more air conditioning units that bring in outside air. They have one of those in each room now, I think. But there are lots of questions, and obviously I'm not an expert in this.
Thanks. John?
Really don't have anything else to add. Thank you, Kate, for that summary, and Chris for the overview. I am certainly in favor of this, and in favor of giving Chris the authority to go forward with it, obviously for the reasons that are mentioned, and for the fact that I think it's going to be very valuable for us to be able to have these findings and be able to present, regardless of what the feasibility portion of the Caryl comes back to. It's just going to be a very important item for us to have overall going forward. So I am in favor of giving Chris the authority to proceed with this process, Mr. Chair.
Robin? Muted.
I am in favor of moving forward. I do have a question about findings and what we do with the findings and what are our responsibilities with respect to the findings. And especially in the Caryl school where we have tenants, is it our responsibility as the landlord to make changes to make it a safe environment? Or is it the responsibility of the licensor to make those changes?
Chris, do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, so for the direct question, our licenses are silent on that. We do require licensees to maintain comprehensive insurance as part of their engagement with the town. So we do have that in place. But I think that's part of the tricky part of this is that, there are no explicit benchmarks, right? In terms of what is safe and what is safe, right? It's only, using your best judgment and, being thoughtful in how to mitigate the spread. So I think that's all to say that, when we get our recommendations back, it's important for us to have conversations, with the occupants of the building as we move forward and consider reopening.
Because my concern is liability. I feel as though there's liability if we don't let the licensors open, and there's potentially liability if we do. And so, I'm just wondering if we should talk to legal counsel and maybe have people sign waivers. I know colleges are making students sign waivers if they elect to be back on campus, because there's just so much we can do to protect people from getting COVID. I mean, all we can do is mitigate risk. We can't make that risk zero.
So Bob, with regards to, I can just give you a little bit of insight with regards to the spin studio. When Bev approached the town to open the studio, as Chris said, the lease agreement is silent on air conditioning. She did install 2 very large, very modern air conditioning airflow systems that both cool and heat. So it was at her expense, and I know that was something that was agreed upon as a result of the significantly reduced rent that she was given for the space. So, which she was very agreeable to put in. I can also tell you that from the school's perspective, one of the very first things when I first got involved with the schools and specifically with the Dover Sherburne, with the foundation for the schools, we bought air conditioning units for the classrooms, meaning the Jeffries family bought air conditioning systems for Pine Hill School, and they were purchased, installed, and then it was deemed that they couldn't keep them in the classrooms, so they had to be removed.
Yeah. So we're a little bit this is a little bit ahead of ourselves here. There
Yep.
is, so for me, the order of business is have the assessment. I mean, again, I think there are minimum air exchange standards that are probably not met by Caryl. But that remains to be seen. Obviously, we would need to disclose what we find to the CDC. And we may need to disclose to the parents, and I think the BOH will ultimately make a recommendation that to the CDC. There is the question of liability. I think is not insignificant. I mean, we're dealing with a private business, and they're dealing with children and parents. And so, you really want to be very safe and very cautious as we go through this. And that's all the reasons why we're currently where we are today, so that we wanted to take every step that we should take as responsible individuals to understand what we have, understand its competency in today's world. And we asked specifically for COVID-19 experience because we don't have a lot of experience with COVID-19 and airflow and air turnover, etc. And so we may be a little ahead of what many other people are here, which is not a bad thing to do. And ultimately, with the advice of counsel, I think we would, make the right choice, whether it's simply disclosure with the assumption of risk on the part of the school and the parents, or we decide that the risk is too great and it would be better to keep the building closed. I mean, those are all options going forward. And so I think we need to start down the path and get a lot more information to help us make a reasonable decision. Yes?
Yep.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to make a motion. I'm going to make the local motion. So I move to authorize the town administrator to execute all documents associated with conducting an air quality assessment in town buildings.
Seconded, John Jeffries.
And all in favor? Aye, Bob Springett.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Hi, Robin Hunter.
Okay. So, Chris, do you need anything else?
Oh, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to 1.1, which is Water Resources Committee discussion and potential vote. I have so many things open. It's like unbelievable. You think Richard Nixon was in the background here? I don't know.
I have the same thing, and then I shut the wrong thing.
Yeah, I did the same thing. Too many things. Water Resources Task Force discussion and potential vote presenter. Robin Hunter.
Okay. So, the Board of Selectmen, as part of our strategic plan and our goals and objectives, when we met together for our 2 working sessions, what became obvious to all of us is that we really needed to begin to look at water strategically and from a long-range perspective. And we felt as though the Water Study Committee was set up to specifically to look at the baseline data that we have to answer the question, are wells running dry? Is that anecdotal information, or is it really the impact of the groundwater going down? We had absolutely no baseline to measure that. And that has started, and that is a really important aspect of water, but it's not everything related to water. Water is a resource that we need in order for this town to be viable. And we felt that we needed to look at it strategically to understand the supply. We also know that the town of Dover does have rights to water at Elm Bank, so you need to look at that and understand what that means, and then also look to see if there are alternative sources of water. So we felt we would set up this committee not to look only at supply. Supply is a very important aspect, but it's then to look at the delivery of water as well. We used to have our own water system in the center of town, and now Colonial Water provides water to the center of town. But the infrastructure belongs to the town, so we're paying for that, for the repairs and maintenance. So these are all things that we need to look at and document. And we also need to dovetail that with the master plan of the town's philosophy and culture. So it made a lot of sense to us as the board to go out and set up a committee that would hopefully have individuals from the town that have knowledge in this area. And the first step would be to hire an outside consultant to help us devise almost a master plan for water that will then dovetail with the master plan and the town's culture and philosophy. When I started putting this together as a draft for the board to look at, I found myself trying to identify at first tasks that this committee would undertake. And I then tore that up and decided that what I really needed to try and do was put together a very high-level, vague overview of the tasks of this committee. And then once the committee is formed, we would then have a much better idea of the projects in which we would embark upon. I tried to compare this to what the Caryl Community Center had done, but for the Caryl Community Center, we always had the benefit of so much historic information being available. For this particular committee, I view the first task as gathering that information to create a historical database. And I also wanted to make sure that everybody understood that we're going to look at things that may not appeal to all residents of Dover, but just because we're looking at them doesn't mean that it's something that is going to ultimately be a recommendation for the town to do, or that the citizens of Dover are going to vote for. So there's going to be a lot of say in how the recommendations from this particular committee will be implemented. So I hope in the draft that was presented, you know, I was able to convey what we're trying to do.
John?
So thank you, Robin. And Bob, with regards to that overview, there are just a couple of things that I want to add, because as Robin suggested, it's our intent for people to understand this is something we are, no pun intended, drilling deep into.
Oh, God.
Sorry,
That's
Justine.
terrible. That's awful.
Justine just cringed right there. I thought about it, but just throw it out there. So I apologize, but we are going to hit pockets where buy-in versus vote-in is going to have two very, very different, probably two very different themes, where we know that it's important to have buy-in to these items, but to get compliance and to get to the next step where some of these things need to go, you're going to need votes. So the buy-in versus the vote-in is going to be a very different conversation. And that's going to mean different things to different people. We want to make that clear. So during this process, additionally, one of the things that I just wanted to mention was infrastructure. The infrastructure that exists is, to say the least, confusing. And quite literally, I know that Carl Warnick may know where the Colonial Water pipes begin and end, and the Dover pipes begin and end, but I don't. And I don't really know or understand a lot of the nuance that's involved in the well system that we have right now. So there's going to be things that we'll look into with this that may lead to further discussion. Hope that just helps.
No, and that's why the most important thing that's going to happen is to document what's available. Now, I know about 20 years ago, there was a water study committee, and one of the members actually dropped off his paper files that I have scanned in, but those are all things that, you know, we really need to create this comprehensive historical database. And I don't want to recreate the wheel. I want to look at what's been done, figure out what we have, and then move forward from there. But I really believe it is imperative to get experts to help us with the guide this process for us.
Anything else, John?
No, thank you.
Okay, so I think John oftentimes calls me the grumpy editor because I tend to edit documents, and I would really like an opportunity to maybe wordsmith one or two things, although I am absolutely in agreement with the overall thrust of the draft and the purpose.
So maybe the next step, Bob, is for everybody, because I can wordsmith it too. I mean, I did a lot of wordsmithing, but so, you know, maybe what we do is we do send out suggested edits to Chris, and then Chris can compile a document with all the edits in it, and then we can look at that at the next meeting.
Yeah, that worked for us in the past.
Right.
On several things that we worked on, and I would like to, I think that's a good suggestion. The other thing is, I saw a couple of chat notes that people were asking that to see the draft. And I'm sure, I'm not really convinced that putting up a Word document, taking up the screen is the right way to do it. But maybe we should syndicate the idea with a couple of boards that might be involved as well to sort of get their feedback.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Before we go and then at the September 3rd meeting, we would move to a final vote.
Right, that makes a lot of sense.
So is that two action steps, John? And
Sure.
I will send
Right, and then again, because we need to be really cognizant of open meeting law, and you cannot send red line versions around. That's
No, we're gonna give
right. No, so if anybody has comments, they need to send it to Chris.
to Chris, right?
Only to Chris.
Yes,
Right.
I absolutely agree. John,
Agree.
you good?
Agree.
Okay, then I'm going
You know,
to.
and Bob, just one last thing. You know, hopefully out of this, you know, when I talk about the town philosophy, personally, I was pleased to see driving around town the notices that went up about us being in a drought. So I am also hoping that part of what will come out of this water resource task force is also a goal for the town of Dover to focus on conservation of water. And that may be extended towards, maybe we want to see if it makes sense to change some of our bylaws. You know, so I would hope that this task force really takes a very macro look at all things water, because it's definitely not a one-year thing. It's a strategic initiative that is going to start now and hopefully continue for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. And I'm going to make the same mistake John did. So this is a strategic initiative, and I hope it's both broad and deep.
No, agreed. Yeah, but I like that idea because the hardest thing is putting something on paper. So.
Oh, yes.
Robin, your point about the character and the culture.
Yes.
It's critically important. It's so important, and I hope you don't mind if I reiterate, but that this Board of Selectmen and over the years that we've been together have run into this conversation on numerous issues, whether it be rail trail or Caryl, or a lot of the things that are culturally important, embedded into the character of the town, become a stark contrast to bylaws, to things that either bylaws that are lacking or something that we just haven't put into place at the level that needs to be done. So I think this is something that is overdue, that we really need to have, because the contrast, as Justine, the visual contrast of the beautiful green lawn across the street from the brown town green is stark. And you just have to determine where and how we get to all buying in to a common ground, because it's just part of the culture of Dover. You have a very different understanding depending upon, quite literally, in that case, which side of the street you're on. So.
Right. And it's everybody in town, whether you're a Colonial customer or not, we're all accessing the same aquifer.
Right.
And we all need to conserve. It can't just be punitive for the 30% of the residents that are on Colonial water.
So Kay may like this. There's a philosophy part of me. And very early, the Greeks had this discussion about the rights of the individual versus the rights of the community. And and this strikes me as sort of one of those issues. As a board of selectmen, we have an obligation to inform our citizens about events and issues and give them the information that they need to act responsibly. As a resident, you have an obligation, you have a responsibility to adhere to the guidelines and rules and regulations of your community. That's part of being a good community, a good resident. Socrates was accused of certain things by his colleagues. He was given the option of exile or to drink the hemlock, and his view was, well, I'm a member of the community, I'm obligated to follow their rules, so he drank the hemlock. And likely, we have that this is a big argument that's been going on not in Dover, but in the country. I mean, there are individual rights, and there is a community rights and responsibilities. And if you're a member of the community, you are expected to adhere to the rules of the community, whether they be water restrictions or civil rules or criminal law. That is a message that I think we need to make sure people get. I'm not a big fan of nudging adults to do things or scolding adults to do things, but I am a big fan of making sure people understand that they're a member of the community and they have responsibilities as well as rights. That's my philosophy moment. I could do a president if you really want me to do a minute.
No, I agree, especially now, we are in a level 2 drought.
Yes. Yeah, this is a serious issue, and it really needs to be, paid attention to. We have achieved high levels of adherence and compliance on mask wearing in Dover. This is a very similar issue. People need to take I think, Robin, you pointed out, we all share the same aquifers. We need to do that, respect our use of water. On the Water Resource Task Force, it clearly is there are a couple of three things that I've always thought of as being strategic areas of interest for the town. One is water, one is energy, one is outdoor space. And on a much more pragmatic level, I thought, we really need to be strategic about technology. I think we've following examples of boards of selectmen past. For an important issue, it makes sense to have a board member take leadership of the issue. It's worked for Springdale. It's worked for the water treatment plant at the region. It worked at the solar field. It worked. It's just a way to get it done. It's important to the town. A board member needs to be directly involved. So this makes a great deal of sense to me. I can't let go of my editing pen, but I'll make sure it's quick to the point. So we'll just move this to the 3rd.
Right, and we'll all tweak and...
We'll send edits or suggestions, and we'll reach
Chris,
out.
you need to give us a deadline. I know it's not the 3rd at 4.
Oh, yeah. They got to be in by Wednesday noon, or we'll ignore them. How's that?
You'll set Mona after us.
Okay. All right, then. We will move on. Thank you, Robin, very much. And I do know how hard it is to create a document. So we'll move to 1.6, which is Board of Selectmen updates. So from my perspective, I'm going to defer to Chris, who will probably give an update on the building committee, and he'll probably give the committee an update on TAD. So I've already delegated these updates to Chris. Robert or John?
I don't have anything to add.
Nope. Good, Chris.
Did you guys want to review the upcoming schedule before?
Yeah.
Over to...
We'll do the So the only thing I'm trying to, so I also have to go back and do the appointments. But on the September 3rd, I really would like to have Colonial show up to the meeting. Part of it would be just to get an update, and the other part of it would be to talk about the drought and what they've been doing to inform and control water flow. So if we could do that, that would be a good thing. Anybody else?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
So does it make sense, or is it too early to have, Mary and the personnel board come and talk to us on September 3rd about how this year we have the compensation study happening.
Right.
So does it still make sense to have a recommendation on a general increase prior to that happening, or?
So Barry sent me an email looking for a way to have a discussion with the board before any formal presentation to the town.
Okay.
And I've sent a note to Chris, seeing if we could get some way of maybe having a planning meeting to sort of talk about it. Mary also has to make a presentation to the warrant committee, I believe. And if there was a way of sort of creating a sort of create a little synergy so we can reduce the number of meetings, that might be a good thing to do. Chris, I don't know if you saw the note. I sent it later this afternoon.
Yeah, so as mentioned, the personnel board is going to meet with the warrant committee. And then we've got our internal finance / FY22 budget kickoff meeting that we spoke about 2 weeks ago about setting up. That's scheduled for the 8th of September with warrant committee leadership and the capital budget chair and the moderator. And part of that conversation will be around the general increase. So and so I should say that's why we put that on the board's agenda for the 17th. But what we could look to do is after that conversation on the 8th, I can talk to you, Mr. Chairman, as to your thoughts on whether you think the 17th is still a good time for that, conversation, or if you want to work on setting up a workshop meeting between the 8th and your next meeting on the 17th.
Okay. So I'll wait to hear from you, and then we can, if need be, we can set something up in between. That makes sense to me. Or we could have the presentation on the 7th, or we could have the presentation on the 17th. John or Robin?
I'm fine with that.
Makes sense.
We're good?
Yeah. I just think that also gives Kate and the HR, it will give Kate another week to finalize the process. Kate, would that be enough time?
That would work.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to item 1.5. And this is about appointments. So several town boards and committees have requested that the Board of Selectmen appoint or reappoint members to their respective boards and committees. So it's been so long since I've done this. I move to reappoint Kathy Weld to the Town Report Committee for a 3-year term effective July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2023. I move to appoint Shashi Chawla to the Dover Cultural Council for a 3-year term effective July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2023. I move to reappoint Michael Donovan to the Board of Appeals for a 1-year term effective July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. I move to appoint Connie Sullivan to the Open Space Committee for a 3-year term effective July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2023. I move to reappoint Sierra Blight to the Historical Commission for a 3-year term effective July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2023. I move to reappoint Richard Fells to the Historical Commission for a 3-year term effective July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2023. I move to reappoint Thomas Johnson. First time I read it, I thought it was Thomas Jefferson. But it was Thomas Johnson to the Historical Commission for a 3-year term effective July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2023. Do I have a second?
John Jeffries, second.
All in favor? Aye, Bob Springer.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Hi, Robin Hunter.
Town Administrator update.
Great, thank you. So we were talking about the budget kickoff meeting. We covered that, but I did have that on my list to let the board know that is our planned meeting to kick things off. And I have heard from both the Warrant Committee and the Capital Budget Committee, who are both excited about participating in that to kick off the process this year. On the Caryl Community Center front, the building committee met this Monday for the first time as a full team. So the building committee had both our owner's project manager as well as our design team now in place, and work has really kicked off in earnest. So they reviewed the schedule from now until leading up to the annual town meeting in the spring, and talked about the various milestones and the community engagement. That's all part of that work. So the committee is meeting on a bi-weekly basis moving forward. And one of the things that we talked about is not only providing some of these short updates to the board during my update session, but potentially having Ford come in every kind of couple of months to provide you guys with a separate standalone agenda item on progress made, if that's something of interest. So I just wanted to throw that out for something for the board to consider. But it's exciting having the team together, and it's a fantastic team, and it'll be a great and busy year ahead of us. On the Hale Reservation Taskforce, I don't have much more new to report other than what we spoke about 2 weeks ago, which is that we're still working on getting some preliminary appraisal numbers for the task force before we re-engage with that team. I did have a conversation today, a status check-in with Chris Coleman over at Westwood, just to get a sense of where Westwood is in terms of their planning process and where they're thinking about in terms of what their next steps are. And they are pretty much lined up with what we're looking at in terms of getting scopes of work for appraisal services and moving forward with an appraisal before communities determine how best in terms of how to move forward with this work. And the last thing that I have for the board is I just wanted to share the good news that the town received $150,000 in the latest bond bill to replace the public safety communication lines throughout town. So this will both create resiliency and expanded coverage for our first responders. And much appreciated and great thanks to Senator Rush's office for helping get that in and get that through. So that's a fantastic win for the community, and one that Chief McGowan, I know, is excited about undertaking. So those are the main updates that I have this evening. Bob, I know you mentioned TAB, but other than the Active Directory work and kind of the real nuts and bolts work that Dave is undertaking, I don't really have anything in terms of major updates for the board at this point.
Okay, that was great news on the grant. That was just terrific. Hey Robin, wasn't that a very long-standing item on the Capital Budget Committee list? The communications upgrade of the police department.
It was. It's been there for a while.
And so it's finally happening. I think it's been at least 5 years where that's been pending. So nice to get it moving.
Yeah, at least that long. So
yeah, at least. Greatly
done.
Well, I only say 5 years because that's when it was there when I was started on the committee.
The other, sorry to interrupt, but Mona is so kind to remind me of the things that I do forget to mention.
He's good that way.
Yes, very good that way, and much appreciated.
Hopefully she has a stick that she,
It's now a virtual stick,
a
Bob.
virtual stick,
Yes,
right?
that's
a virtual
right.
stick.
I do have one.
Just a prod, just a little.
At your next meeting, which is actually next week, our special counsel for our cable license renewal process, which the board authorized me to move forward with 2 weeks ago, will be before you to talk about the process and talk about things that he's seen other communities pursue and really just how this process unfolds. So that'll be added also to your agenda on Thursday evening on the 3rd. And with that, Mona will also be in touch in the next couple of days just to schedule time for the board to have a date, to find a date for a public hearing, which really just kicks off the process for the cable renewal. But Bill, who's the attorney, will describe all of this for the board next Thursday. Thanks for the reminder, Mona.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Man, things are starting to roll. I know it's the end of August, and I can't believe next week is September, but
September.
we're going to start with some momentum. Hopefully, we can drive right through.
Yeah, I can't believe we've sort of been on quasi-lockdown since March.
Don't think about it that way.
Very depressing.
Today was a day to be outside. Today was a gorgeous early,
Absolutely.
late summer, early fall day. It was just terrific. All right. I don't know if I'm on schedule or not, but got to be close, I guess. So consent agenda. We want to approve special licenses for August 21st, retroactive, and 28th, September 3, 6, 12, 19, 25, 26, October 3, 10, 17, 24, 31, and November 7th, 2020. There is an awful lot of activity going on at Polisset Farm, that club. Did anybody have any info on that?
I've not been yet.
So I guess it's an evening, like a cafe or a dinner?
Yeah.
So that's good to see too. Hope you
I
know,
went
they
to-
follow all the protocols.
I went to one last year.
Was it good?
It was good. It was a beautiful night. It's very beautiful sitting out there, and they have tents set up with picnic tables, and it would be very easy to socially distance, just spreading the picnic
I
table.
got to think about it because it'd be nice to get out.
No,
mean,
I
the only
did
thing
it last year. It was great.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Okay. So I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Seconded, John Jeffries.
All in favor? Aye, Bob Springett.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Hi, Robin Hunter.
Do you guys have any other issues you would like to bring up before we adjourn?
No?
There were a couple of chat comments that were very positive about the Water Resource Task Force.
Yes.
Right. And I was very pleased to see that people comment. I know you guys went over the goals and objectives before, but it was nice to get feedback.
Yes. Yeah, we did talk about that. It was, and I like. Yeah, it was really good to get it. It really was.
Right.
So that was fun. Okay, folks. So how about a motion to adjourn?
I move for adjournment.
All in favor? Aye, Bob Springett.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Hi, Robin Hunter.
Guys, thank you all very much for participating and all the work you did to lead up to the meeting. Have a wonderful day. Rest of the week. Well, I keep thinking this is Thursday, but it's still Wednesday. Anyway, see some of you guys on Friday. Otherwise, have a great weekend.